Hello again, it's Glenn Walford here and welcome to the Franchise Everything podcast where we talk about everything and anything related to franchising. And I'm at the actual Gong headquarters in Sydney today, which is a bubble tea brand, with the master franchisee Lili Shi here in Australia. Hello Lili, how are you?
Hi Glenn, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
And I know we've done a store tour already today. We've done some other interviews and everything there, so it's been a great day so far. Thanks for having us. This is all about you though. We're going to talk about you and your business journey and how you've done what you've done. Now, I've always said, and if anyone's seen the other content we've done with you today and your team, I've been saying quite a bit that you'd be very much under the radar in franchising in Australia, and not many would realise that Gong is 145 plus stores in the Australian market. So we're going to talk about how you did that. But let's start with how you started in business. What's your story and how you got started?
In 2010, I had a crepe business, a Japanese crepe business, and I'd grown it to four stores, which was also franchised.
So you did franchise that business?
That's right. So it was a franchise from Japan. So I actually flew there to learn the whole trade, and we had three franchises.
How did you decide on a crepe business?
Well, the story goes a bit before that. I became a mum in end of 2009, and shortly after that, my husband went bankrupt at the time, and then I was gifted $70,000 from my parents, which was for the purpose of buying a house
to get you on your feet. And
that's right, because we didn't have a place to stay. And I actually took my family back to my parents' house to live there. So with that $70,000, I went against their wishes and I started the crepe business. I partnered up with my primary school friend. We went, so we had $150,000. We started the crepe business, and that's how things
That's where it started.
Yeah.
So you ran over that really fast. So I'm not sure why. So, okay, so you started a family and everything, and things went a little pear-shaped there, obviously.
That's right.
So what made you decide your solution to that circumstance to look at a business?
Well,
where did that come from?
Because at the time I felt that I didn't have enough skills or knowledge or experience to start my own business, to create a business. So I started discovering franchising.
You didn't even look at an employment? Like a job?
No.
Didn't come into your mind?
Because I was a new mom and I couldn't commit to a full-time job. My baby at the time was 5 months old. So
That's really, it's an insight into your mindset, I think, saying that you couldn't commit to that, so you went entrepreneurship instead. Yeah. So much more stable.
Well.
It's a very interesting approach.
Yeah. So that's what happened, and it's been an uphill, I guess, since then. So
the crepe business. So why crepes? So what attracted you to that type of business?
Because we didn't have that in Australia, not in Sydney, and people are very familiar with crepes, French crepes, but not so much with Japanese crepes, where they had savoury and sweet. And the difference between that with the French crepes was that it was a grab and go. So we can invest very little. It doesn't have to be a restaurant.
So it wasn't a big location with fit out?
No, it was a kiosk, was grab and go. Yeah.
Yeah, and whereabouts was that?
In World Square in Sydney, and I worked in there for 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah.
So, but mind you did 2 years and 4 stores and 3 franchise. How did you set about franchising? Like, you obviously didn't know much about franchising, I'm guessing.
No, I didn't at the time. So we were exploring as we went, but then we also had the support of the team back in Japan at the time. So I did learn a lot. That was my huge learning curve in franchising in that 2 years.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get my head around it, that you just decided you're going to jump in and be a franchisor.
That's right. Because I thought,
were you nervous? Like, what was
what happened was the business was doing really, really good. There were lines out the door every day, and then we were being approached by people wanting to open the same business, and that's when we thought, we can go the franchise way.
So when you went to Japan and you found this brand and did all that, were you thinking of franchising at that stage?
No, I just wanted to open maybe a store or 2.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't have this massive grand ambition to a big empire?
Not at all. I just wanted to have an income.
Wow.
It wasn't ambitious
Sorry,
at all.
I can't get my head around it.
It wasn't ambitious at all, no.
No, wow. I know it's ambition. So, okay, so how did you franchise it? So what help did they give you? Because obviously they're in Japan.
Yeah.
So when I know watching other international brands franchising the Australian market, it's not always so easy for them to help from a remote location.
It was by word of mouth. So it was people who try the product, love the product, and that's the same story with Gong Cha. The 10 years after that, it was word of mouth and their passion for the brand and then the love for the product. Yeah, so they approached us and we want to open our store. Can you help us do that?
So how did it work on a daily basis? So with the family, with the growing family,
yes.
How did you function? What was that like in running a crepe business and then opening 3 franchises inside 2 years?
I was the one-man show for a good 2 years. So, working in the store and talking to the franchisees. Yeah, it happened because he had to. Yeah. So
and where were the other locations? So were they
we
close
had one
by?
in Adelaide and the other 2 were in Sydney.
So you went like interstate franchising. Was that your first one, was it?
Yes. So, and that's what started the Gong journey.
Yeah.
Because the franchising in Adelaide he had a huge store and he didn't only want crepes in it because our concept was grab and go. So you had a fairly
narrow offer as far as that grab and go. That was it.
Correct. Okay. And then so he wanted to offer bubble tea along with crepes. So he had approached a bubble tea brand at the time, and then in the end he had the 2 concepts in the one store.
So how did you work through that with him? Is that something you were happy with, or?
Oh yeah, so then I just had to set up the store for him to sell crepes, and then he basically just had 2 businesses in the one location, and that was my light bulb moment.
So what was the light bulb about it?
I'm thinking, well, because I'm a crepe background at the time.
So you've now identified yourself as a crepe person.
At the time, I'm thinking, well, I want to sell my crepes, right? But if I can entice more people to join up to complement the crepes, I should have a bubble tea brand. And so then I did some homework, a lot of homework, and I went to Taiwan and tasted multiple brands.
So what did you see about bubble tea at that time? Thinking back, what year was this?
This was in 2011.
Okay, so what did you see about bubble tea in the Australian market? Because I imagine bubble tea in the Australian market at that time wasn't very big outside of CBDs, I'd imagine.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so what did you see about it?
Well, bubble tea at the time, it wasn't huge, but then there was still a demand for it within the Asian community at the time. And big crepes it's a Japanese crepe, being an Asian product. I thought that the marriage was perfect. They complemented each other really, really well. So, and it was the time I didn't think about growing the bubble tea brand at the time. It was more, it was a side.
So it was another one of those little non-empire things you were just going to add on little bubble tea.
That's right. To just give more offering to the customer, to more choice.
You didn't just come up with one yourself, but you had to go to Taiwan to look for one. That's incredible.
Again, it's the lack of experience.
Yeah.
And I needed something really, really good because I think the bubble tea, the market was quite, we had a few well-known brands in Australia at that time, and it needed to be something better.
Yeah, so you want
to stand out.
So you knew bubble tea well enough to know that you think it needs to be done better.
That's right. That's right. For it to survive. And then.
So tell me about that journey. So how much bubble tea did you see around you, for example? So
there were only 2 players at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you thought it could be done better than that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I know you were telling me, and I'm trying to get it out of you, not giving it to me. You off air, you were saying about that you had a bubble tea store very close to you, to your crepe business.
That's right.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So tell me about that, about what you were seeing about turnover.
Yeah, so I was running my crepe business, and right next to me, that was the bubble tea store. We shared a wall. There were 2 kiosks.
Little did they know a future competitor was right there, right next door.
I'll give you another interesting piece of information is that we have since taken over that site. I think it was last year, and now we run the bubble tea in that location where I was neighbours. That's right. Yes.
Wow.
So they were doing their bubble tea thing. I was doing my crepe thing, and I noticed, of course, the demand for the product, and I thought, I think I can do better.
Excellent. So, all right. So you've on the search looking. Thank God for the internet. I reckon that you're on the search looking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're better than obviously the Asian market to have a look at bubble tea brands to bring them to the Australian. So tell me about your assessment process, because Gong was obviously who you've ended up with. Thankfully.
That's
right.
But
what was your assessment like in your research prior to?
So I had organised meetings with multiple brands in Taiwan that weren't in Australia at the time, and I had set up meetings with.
Sorry, why Taiwan? Why Taiwan?
That's where tapioca came from. So milk tea and tea's been around forever, but to put tapioca balls, the pearls as we call it, into the drink, that came from Taiwan.
Okay,
so
makes sense.
Where else to go other than where the product was born, right? Yeah. So that's where I went, and I spoke to multiple brand owners, how they saw their brand, how their product is.
So how many do you think you spoke to or
Around
researched
6.
seriously?
Yeah.
And how did they receive you? Was there varying degrees of interest, and how did they receive an approach from Australia like that from you?
Yeah, so the conversation didn't go as very far, but at that time, everyone was very keen to go out into a Western country like Australia, because bubble tea at that time was still mainly in Southeast Asia, and they were all keen to see if they can venture out into.
So Australia was maybe a safe, tight Western market for them to trial.
Yep. Like a migration country, absolutely. So they thought it would be the perfect place
to trial
test the market. Yeah.
Okay. And obviously several brands have come out here, haven't they?
Oh, now I think we've got over 20 brands.
Wow.
Yeah.
20 brands. Okay, so you're touring around Taiwan trying bubble tea and having meetings. Tell me about that. Tell me about that journey, because I know it's actually the reason why I drill in on this is that I'm sure there's a lot of people who have got these passions for brands that they want to bring. There's a lot of people who want to bring brands into the Australian market. About how you totally green, how you went about it. It's a really interesting thing.
So initially it was just learning about the brand and trying their products and seeing and comparing it to what we have already in Australia, because it has to be better. For it to work in Australia. It can't be second best, then you won't, because there's a lot of competitors. I mean, there were 2 big players, but there's a lot of individual mum and dad run stores.
In the Australian market, yes.
That's right. So in order for it to stand out, it must be really, really good. So I started with the taste of the product. I need to like it because I'm a huge bubble tea fan. Yep. So I know the differences, I guess, the good and the bad. So in Taiwan, I tasted all the different brands products. I spoke to the owners, and they were giving me how they see their brand and how they want it, their vision for the brand. And that's where I sort of decided on which one.
So Gong presented a better vision in your perspective.
And the product. As soon as I tasted, I knew that this is going to work and people are going to go nuts for it. Yeah.
So what did the due diligence process go like then next from you and from Gong Cha? How did that work out?
At that time, it was a family business, so it was a lot simpler back in the day.
And I think you said previously in an interview you had about 200 locations at that time.
They had 200 locations, yes, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Taiwan, of course. So when I went there, I just had to show them and convince them that I was the right candidate to bring the brand to Australia and to make it a success.
How did you do that?
Passion and then a lot of talking, because I did lack in experience and I did lack in capital funding. So I didn't come from the position I was in before the crepe and then the crepe. I wasn't showered with a huge fund that I can say, I'm going to open 50 stores in 2 years. I wasn't able to offer that to them. I didn't have a very pretty resume of, 20 years in food and beverage. I had 2 years in food and beverage. So it was really my love for the product and my love for the brand. So I went back to Taiwan 3 times to meet with the owners.
Is that to keep convincing?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I'm trying to visualize that, because I can imagine brands, if a brand at around 200 locations has got a desire to get into the Western marketplace and seeing Australia as an entry, I can imagine that they would be looking for people or businesses with scaled hospitality type businesses to take into the market.
That's right.
So what do you think was the thing that maybe, I know you say passion.
It is so true though.
You reckon?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because I was there 3 times, and then once I had, I think, around 30 stores, the owners visited Australia and they were in the warehouse with me and we had a small conversation. They said, we had so many better candidates than you at the time. And I'm like, yeah, I can imagine, because the other master franchises in other countries, they were running multiple brands.
Yes.
And I was a rookie in that regard.
So there were multiple brand operators already.
Correct.
Added Gong Cha to their existing.
And a huge business background. And they said, but, we trusted you because, you're young and not much experience, but then just your love for the product and your passion convinced us. And then they said, we made the right choice, which was
It would have been hugely
amazing.
satisfying.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's go there. So you've got the deal.
Yeah.
So how did you find out that you were awarded the license or the master franchise rights to Australia? What was that like?
Forth. So I went there multiple times, 3 times. I kept talking to them, and then in the end, they just agreed to my terms, which was
You just wore them down. You kept
and it was great.
So what was that moment like when you found out? Was it like an email, or was it a letter, or was it a call, or face to face?
It was an email because I've been trying to negotiate as well. Not only was I not as well equipped, with the funds and with experience, I was also trying to get the best deal.
You're trying to negotiate. So I'm not skilled. I haven't got the experience or the money, but I want a cheaper price.
That's right.
Excellent.
And well, what I offered to them at the time was a win-win situation, because it's normal. When you get a master franchise, you pay a lump sum for the license fee, and you start opening stores. So then I said, can we do a better deal? I'll pay you a little bit less because I don't have that much funds, but maybe I'll pay you some every time I open a store. So if I do get to 50, you get double the franchise fee. And they agreed to that.
So you try to back end.
So now, of course, it's 100% a win-win situation, because they would have gotten a lot more than what they would have had if it was a straight fee. That's right, because now we've got over 145 locations.
So that's a great story. So what sort of preparation did you have to do? So you signed the deal.
Yeah.
You got that done.
Yeah.
So you got the master rights. So for anyone who don't know, can you describe what the master rights arrangement is, or a master franchisee for Australia looks like?
That's actually huge responsibility, because then I'm responsible for the whole Australian market for the brand. So anyone who wants to open a Gong Cha has to come to me. So and that's how it is. So the life of the brand basically is on my shoulders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big responsibility.
That's right.
No pressure at all. No.
Yeah.
So what's the preparation like? So what do they require of you? So for you to get ready?
Yeah. So I went there for 2 weeks to do the training. I mean, because it was a family business at the time and it was bare bones. So I was there for 2 to 3 weeks, learning how to make the tea on the ground in the stores, learning the trade, and then.
What was that like? Did anything surprise you, or worry you, or did you get nervous about anything?
Oh no, I was tested. Nothing was worrying, but I was tested. Going back to studying the recipes.
Did you have pressure that you had to perform to?
Oh yeah.
Because I imagine you have to pass training essentially.
Yeah, and remember I was operating on a budget, so I can't say, stay for a month, and then I also have a kid to look after.
Yes.
Yes,
of course.
There's all these things happening at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. So so you did your 2 weeks training, and what sort of did you have restrictions on you? What sort of guidance and everything did you have? Or I know that because when some brands do international rights to this market, or to any market for that matter, they can be really restrictive and pretty tight on their rules that they require them follow, and others can be really open and just have
really open. At that time, because I think they were still expanding, so they gave me the very basics of what the stores are to look like, what the logos are, and these are the recipes. And then that was pretty much it. And then I looked for a location for about 6 months, and I managed to open a store in 2011, end of 2011.
So, so you're over here. So you looked for the location. What were you looking for in a location? So in your mind, never having opened a bubble tea business, did they help you with location principles and strategies?
Not at all.
Because it is pretty hard, obviously, when they're not in this market as well. I can imagine new demographics and all that sort of thing.
They had limited resources,
Okay. So what were you looking for in the first location?
It had to be in the CBD. And it had to be within budget.
Okay.
Yeah. So I managed to find 601 George Street. That was the very first. It's on George Street in Sydney, which is a very busy location. The rental on it was reasonable at the time. Yeah, the rental on it was reasonable at the time because it had a very narrow frontage. And that was
perfect for you.
Perfect.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes. Okay, so that's great. So, and you had that vision. So you signed that lease 2011, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah, and when did you get it? How long did it take you to get it open?
Oh, I think 2 months.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, 2 months. Good. And then I was that one-man show for the next 3 years, I would say, or 2 to 3 years, up until about 2014 when I had my first hire. So I was what I called a briefcase company. So I had a briefcase, and then in it, I'm the different cards. I'm the designer.
I haven't heard that. Oh,
you haven't?
No.
So no office.
Okay, I have heard.
I carry it around with me, and that's it. Right, that's a company.
I have heard stories of maybe it's Peters of Kensington or something where that they were trying to look bigger than they were, and then they would call and someone say, hang on, I'll put you through to Dave in shipping, and I'd go, hello, Dave in shipping, and have a different voice each time. That's my vision.
It's exactly like that.
Is that what you were like?
That's right. So I would help the franchisees when they open. I'll help them make the tea. I'll be their support in the store. I was working in my own stores as well, doing the rostering, just everything that you can imagine.
What was it like managing a shop fit first time, fitting out a retail or a food retail business?
For me at the time, I only cared about the budget. So, I mean, since then, it's about quality, about the materials. I'm a bit more, educated.
More finicky on things.
That's right. That's right. But at the time, it was just whoever can fit the budget and come up with the design, then that's all.
You got the job. You got the gig.
That's right. You got the job. Yeah, that's right. And if you can finish it in time, so it doesn't eat into the rental free period. And
absolutely.
Rent. That's
Get it in to start making money as quick as you can.
So that's why I think now I am just so aware of cost savings for the franchisees, because I've been there and done that, and I know how every dollar counts, like when you're setting up the business. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you talked earlier today when we had a discussion about rent-free periods and rent contributions that landlords give you, pass all of that straight back to franchisees because of that reason.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So, okay, that's 2011. Open your first store.
Yeah.
How many franchisees did you open up in those 2 years when you were a one-person show? What was that like?
11.
11 stores on your own?
Yeah. So I opened up the second store myself 3 months later in Market City in Sydney.
Yep.
So the first store was in August and the second one was around November, December. And then after that, we had Melbourne, we had Adelaide, a few in Sydney, and that's all me sort of going to the stores, talking to the franchisees as a business development, talking to the designer as, the design team, supporting the store, ordering the equipment for them. I did everything, and it was possible. Yeah.
I think every franchisor watching or listening to this must be shaking in their boots, thinking of the thought of that 11 stores on their own, while running their own stores at the same time. It's
and some of them were interstate. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was with the stock in the garage.
That too?
That's right.
Stock was piled up? Was it tapioca piled up in the garage?
I went from a single garage to a double garage to a triple garage. So that's
because it was necessary.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, so that's 2013.
Yes.
So what was your first hire to bring on to help you?
Oh, then that would have been George.
Yep.
Yeah, business development. So he's the proper first hire. Before George, we had store managers, because then I'm going to help the franchisees. I'm not in the store so much.
Yes.
Then we started to have store managers, and then the store managers then sort of became regional managers, then became inspectors, trainers, and went from there.
So what were the main problems you were confronting then? What were the main issues you were dealing with then in that early stages of a business from 0 to 11? Apart from probably not sleeping, what were your other main issues you think with business wise?
Oh, for us, I think it's the product consistency, because we early on we had stores in different states. So we just really had to make sure, because I was choosing all the franchisees, face-to-face meetings, getting to know them before we sign on. So in order to deliver product consistency, but without the support staff, because remember, I was the one person, I needed to make sure that they were the right operators, that they will do the right thing, and, they have the best interest in the business. So that was really important, and that they had to love the brand. And I believe then that would help them run the business the right way, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah. It strikes me that, and looking in the store today when we were wandering around the store, it strikes me as controlled chaos. Like, it was really busy, like people were running around, and there's people running around with bowls and scoops and stuff everywhere. But it also seems simple at the same time in some way.
Yeah.
And that sort of strikes me when you talk about you running it all yourself and having, because when you say that you're first, you had franchisee in Adelaide and then you had one in Sydney and everything like that, it feels spread, but it feels like quite a simple business to run. Would you describe it as that from a franchisee perspective?
I think
that's
so.
Part of the secret?
Yes. Look, the hardest part of it is probably training the staff. And then once you have the staff, then that's it. Like, it's methodological, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so you're at 11. You've got a hire. You started rolling. Now you've obviously accelerated because you're at nearly 150 stores now in 2023. So what was the progression along there? So what were the key things that were happening from 11 stores then when you got that first hire?
Once we got to 11 stores, then I can start spending time on promoting the brand, because we didn't do any marketing until about 2 years ago. We relied on word of mouth.
Wow.
Yes. So it was word of mouth. It was
so not a lot of local area marketing and all that sort of stuff.
We did that. So they will have very localized,
Okay, very tight sort of
brochures, for example, something very, very simple, but we didn't do mass
major
marketing.
campaigns and everything like national campaigns.
That's right. Yeah. So we rely completely on word of mouth and on, how the customers see the brand and that they want to own their own store. Yeah. So in 2014, we did a concert, Jay Chow, which is a huge celebrity in Southeast Asia. He was in for a concert and we wanted to sponsor the concert, which is by giving vouchers, and it was a very simple sponsor, a small sponsor because of the budget. But so I remember very clearly at 2014 the concert was in 2014 in April. When we signed up the deal, it was end of 2013. We had 7 stores, 2013, so around 18 months after I launched the first store. And then by the time the concert happened, we had 11 stores. Wow. So that was a huge jump for us, from 7 to 11 in that 6 months time. Yeah. So
especially with very limited resources and support and people to do it.
That's right.
So beyond there, what's the role on there? Because there's obviously clearly an acceleration that happened at some point.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that gap? Can you talk us up to like this pre-COVID? So that pre-COVID gap, because I imagine COVID's a bit of a line in the sand, isn't it, as far as momentum drop for a lot of brands, actually, I'm seeing in the marketplace.
Well, actually, COVID hit us like it hit all the other brands.
Yes.
But we actually grow the brand in Australia. We put so many stores during the COVID years because we gave so much support to the franchisees. We waived royalty for very long periods of time when they were on the government subsidies. We did not pass on the 10-fold transport fees at the time due to COVID to the franchisees.
Yeah. Yep.
We absorbed all the cost. And because of that, the franchisees were able to survive the COVID
that
impacts.
COVID period, yeah.
That's right. And then because of that, a lot of the competitors and other operators, QSR operators, had left their sites, which were really good sites. And so during that 3 years, we were able to pick up a lot of locations at a good deal.
Yes.
And because we've got the more multi-site owner franchisees on standby, willing to open more stores, we were able to open a lot more stores. Just last year alone, I think if I got my numbers right, we opened 28 stores. Yeah. So So before COVID, we had maybe 80, 70.
Okay.
And we pretty much
you've almost doubled.
That's right.
In that period there.
Yeah.
And I think that, brands that looked after their franchisees very well and were able to maintain numbers and then had good, simple business models have emerged out very well. We're seeing this sort of two-pace markets in there. So that's a very interesting fact there. That almost doubled in growth in that period. I can't think of anyone else who's got anywhere close to that.
Yeah, so I'm proud to say, because we were looking at the QSR reports, and McDonald's, I think, only opened 22 stores last year. So it's been a huge year for us.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. So how did you get to 80 stores? So if you're 80 stores before COVID and you're 11 in 2013.
That's right.
What was that period like in building
That
up
was
to
very
those stores?
hectic because I was still operating out of the garage storage.
Still? How long were you in the garage storage
Until
for?
2014.
Okay, wow.
Yes. So that was the magical moment when, I said, okay, we need to invest a lot more into this business in order for it to continue the growth that we expect it to grow. So then we moved into 1,000 square meter warehouse.
Yeah, in Sydney?
In 2014, yeah.
Okay. And that helped you obviously
and that could have
serviced
serviced around 35 to 50 stores.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we were saying in a previous chat we're having, you've got 6 warehouses nationally or something now, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so where are they there? So the 3 in Sydney, 1 in Brisbane and 1 in Melbourne, was
2
it?
2 in Brisbane and 1 in Melbourne.
Okay, all right. So what sort of team did you add on in that time? So you're obviously getting on more help to open stores and everything for you.
Yep.
How did the business change in there? Have you?
Well, we still had a very
the
lean
culture of the business and everything. How has that changed over that time?
We still had a very lean team. I think between 2014 and especially during COVID. But I think these last 2 years we've been expanding exponentially. So now I think across the office and the still lean.
Yes, still
the
lean,
warehouse still lean. We've got about 30, 35.
Team members?
That's right.
From 1 to 35.
Yes,
that's it.
yes.
Okay.
So still lean because, people look at us and say, because our staff members, our team members, they wear different hats,
So what sort of support does a Gong Cha franchise owner need do you find? What support do they ask for, and what support do you find yourself as a head office team giving?
It's localized support. So it is what that business needs at that particular location. Is it to draw more foot traffic? Is it to educate customers about our product? Is it to promote a certain product, or is it to have people know more about the brand? So I think it just depends on each location. That's because all other training, whatnot, that all happens before the business.
Yes.
The difficult part is once they start running the business and the difficulties that they run into once it's in operation. And that's how we support the business in, tailoring what it is that they need and offering it to them.
What sort of innovations do you see happening? Do you see yourself innovating in product? Like one thing I noticed in store today, and I was thinking, there's no food. Do you see yourself ever doing anything food that complements it? Do you see that as a possibility?
We have done simple bites to complement the drinks though, but never anything that's too heavy that becomes a meal. So we've had popcorn, we've had waffles, things like that would complement beautifully with a bubble tea.
Do you see adding that sort of stuff in future, like to add transaction value or something? Is that a path, do you think, or do you think mainly just the focus on bubble tea?
No, I think the focus is on bubble tea, but it's always good to have seasonal bites to complement the drinks. Yeah, to add just something new. Yeah.
What's your looking at a crystal ball? What's your vision for what you think Gong Cha could be in the Australian market? Have you got a number or locations or the role you want it to play, or what do you see?
I think Gong Cha is a leader in the market for bubble tea. I want to go beyond bubble tea. So it's not just about selling pearls and tea together, but it's selling the product is there, but I think it's selling the concept to educate the people who has no idea what the product is. That's the reach we want to go. So we go beyond, a little bit beyond just the novelty of bubble tea, but how you can enjoy the product. There's so many ways, sparkling tea, fruit teas. There's all sorts of ways. That's where I want the brand to go. I can't give you a number because I think it's limitless. Right? If we're able to put 145 stores in 10 years, what can we do in the next 10 years? So I'm very excited to the journey ahead. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to finish, don't you? Yeah. You think it's a good way to finish? I think it sums everything up so beautifully.
Yeah.
I think it's Lily, I think it's a wonderful story. I think I think it's inspiring to so many people, and I think even a whole bunch of people, existing executives in franchising, would look at your story and think, what an amazing achievement you've done. So thanks so much for telling us and our viewers the story today. I really appreciate having us here at Gong Cha.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.